Hello and welcome back to Creator Spotlight. I'm so excited, mostly because everything is wrapping up, but it's wrapping up with such an amazing game for today. I'm very, very excited. Everywhere in the comments, you guys were telling us all summer long Creator Spotlight was super fun. You love that we featured indie games, but you would have liked it if we featured at least a little bit of a AAA. So that's what we did for you. I hope you guys are really happy. This is going to be a very, very good stream. Yeah, let's go cut to the trailer for Lost in Random by Zoink.
Perfect.
World of Random bends with the roll of one dice. A dice that has ruled this kingdom for generations, transforming the fates of people just like you. But what if I told you there is another dice with the power to change everything? Now, my friend, it's your turn to roll, to play the odds, and break the curse of random.
Well. You can't have the sweet without the sour.
No, Dicey. They should be scared of us. Right?
Hello, welcome to the Zoink team. How are you today?
Hello, thank you. Great. It's
Awesome.
6 p.m. over here. Tired but happy.
Nice.
And also
Nice to have you.
Awesome. Why don't we just start introducing yourself? Olov, tell us who you are and what you do at Zoink.
Yeah, hello. I'm Olov Redmalm, or Redmalm. I'm the creative director and lead writer on Lost in Random.
Nice.
And yeah.
Nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we introduce Leo? Hi, how are you?
Hi, we try again. Yeah. I'm Leon Brynielsson, and I work as an environment artist here at Zoink in Gothenburg. And I've been working for Lost in Random for the last 3 years, maybe, as an all-rounder, but mostly focusing on environments.
Nice.
Yeah.
Welcome. So tell us, everyone's very excited about this game. There's been a lot of hype around it. We can say a lot of things, but all of you want to start telling us what Lost in Random is?
Well, it is a narrative-driven exploration game with what we call dice battles in them, which is a blend of past time tactics and real-time action. And it's quite difficult to explain, but once you jump into it, I heard someone comparing it to riding a bicycle. Once you ride it, you will get it. But it's set in this world called Random, and it's about a girl called Even who grows up with her sister Odd in Onecroft, one of the lowest of 6 districts. So every district, there's one district for each side of a 6-sided die. Of the one true, or the queen of this world who rules this world with the dark die, the one true dark die. And so all other dice are mysteriously missing, and every day she rolls the die to see how the world around them changes in these different districts. And when you turn 12 in this world, she comes to your home village. You get to roll her dice and see in which area of the world you're gonna live and spend the rest of your days. So Even's bigger sister Odd turns 12. The queen comes to the village, offers her dice, she rolls it, and she gets a 6, which means she's going to get pulled away to Sixtopia to live with the queen in this supposed dream world. And Odd, and Even won't have anything of won't have it. She runs away in the middle of the night to go after her sister, and that's where the story that's where the game really takes off. So
do you want to tell us about the inspiration? I think you prepared some things for us to really deep dive into this theme.
So as some of you might know, we are the team behind Fe previously. We're also with EA Originals, and coming from that game and also Ghost Giant that we worked on separately, a VR game, which was very bright and colorful, and Ghost Giant that was, I mean Fe, that was very mysterious and kind of abstract. And we also had Flipping Death that we worked on around that time as well, which was very dialogue-driven, lots of humor, comedy, platformer. And we wanted to kind of combine everything that we had learned into one bigger title and to mix the mystery of Fe and with the excellent writing by Ryan North, who worked with us in this title as well, from Flipping Death to Lost in Random.
Canadian represent.
Yeah, I hope he's watching. It's been a blast to work with, and also the emotional storytelling of Ghost Giant. We wanted to do something darker, and so we always start out at Zoink. Leo was with us then. We are quite art-driven studio, and I think Leo is an artist at heart. And we sat around, me and Klaus Lingeled, who is the head of studio, head of the development at Zoink and Thunderful, which we sat together. We drew a lot of images and explored dark fairy tales inspired by. We were inspired by Sean Tan, for instance, who's a great Australian illustrator who makes these very moody paintings, and Miyazaki Ghibli movies, Studio Ghibli movies, which have this very matter-of-factly strange creatures in it. And but it wasn't until we found this painting of a girl and a dice stuck in a giant board game world that really sparked the idea for Lost in Random, and like everything just kind of floated out of that, like because dice, taking that's such an iconic, one of the most iconic symbols for games. So it also was so interesting to us how to explore, like, what is a world like that's grown out of and around the rule of dice rolls. So everything just it was already from the get-go, it was an idea that really lent itself really well to both gameplay and art and storytelling. So it kind of the story kind of told itself from there.
Yeah,
and,
I really love that chat is already like, oh, this really has a Leica kind of feel, which is, I think, exactly what you were going for.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
We actually, we looked at lots of different claymation and stuff like that, and we would send these clips to animators external also, and especially during COVID, when it's really difficult to stand in front of people and go like, oh, you should do like this, and we would instead just send clips of different claymation movies, including Leica movies that we really liked, and just look at the materials and look at the snappiness of the animations and try to capture that. But at some point we even tried, skipping every other frame of the animation to see if we could get that kind of Tim Burton-esque animation style, but that ended up looking kind of laggy, so we still have this kind of smooth animations, but something we would love to keep experimenting with.
Yeah, I remember looking a lot at like Box Trolls, the movie. I think it's a Leica movie. I think it's an amazing looking movie, and I think they built it by hand, actually crafted it. That was a big inspiration as well.
Yeah,
nice.
We worked with, and as you mentioned, Ryan North. We worked with him and wrote actually all of the dialogue, which really also helped breathe life into the environment, other than, of course, Leo's excellent art. And so
for those who don't know, Ryan North is a Canadian author, comic book artist. He's famous for the dinosaur comic, but also Adventure Time and things like that. So I guess he's really good at that world building element.
Yeah, and Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, and what's it called? Wrote some screenplay for the Bravest Warriors also.
Right.
So we suddenly had this, a bigger budget, a bigger team to create something more towards triple A or double A graphics, and we still wanted to explore, this handcrafted look, because all our games are, I think, basically all our games have some kind of handcrafted look, from Stick It to the Man that has more cardboard style characters, clip outs in a platformer kind of game, and Ghost Giant that is like this kind of dollhouse world in VR, and this is the first time where we can really, instead of making, at some point we asked ourselves, do we want to make realistic autonomy, for instance, or realistic faces, or do we still want to go for this handcrafted look? And we felt it was more fun for us to explore, and it's also more unusual. You don't see that very often. Just trying to capture realistic clay and the feel of like this has actually been built by someone, and now you're living in that giant world. So as opposed to Ghost Giant, where we went from, where we had this tiny character that you as a giant oversaw in this dollhouse world. Now we kind of flip the tables, and now you're instead this little tiny character in a huge board game claymation world. So that was really exciting to explore. These are some excellent concept art by Victor Becker,
These are beautiful.
art director. So look him up on Instagram.
Yeah.
And,
Shout out, Victor.
yeah, we love you.
We love you.
I actually really love that you play with that idea. I think like this game is really special because there's so many layers to enjoy, right? Like at a first pass, it's just a beautiful, great game, but you really thought about conceptually, you know, you really were inspired by tabletop and this notion of proportions, the player is like this big giant. And that's like, I see as prevalent through a lot of your games, actually, like Fae and also Flipping Death and all that stuff. But this notion of like giants, I really like that. I think this comes into this game as well with Dicey and everything.
Yeah, we really love to play with scale that way, and at least the recent years.
Yeah. I also really like something which is, I think everyone pointed out, like I know it's been mentioned several times that this has like a Tim Burton-esque quality, that it reminds them of Nightmare Before Christmas. I think what people are really saying is actually that it reminds them of old movies, old games, even in the way you've done your trailer with the voiceovers. It really reminds me of something of my childhood, which I find really precious and why it resonates with people.
Oh yeah, thank you for saying that. And like we are certainly, when talking about the game very early on and during the whole process, like all of us are just throwing in so much inspiration from our childhoods, and this feels like such a huge tribute for us, like all the team, to all kinds of different fairy tales and movies that we grew up with, and I myself am a huge Star Wars nerd, and while Klaus Lingeled, the head of development here, who first showed us this, like, look at this painting with a girl and a dice and a giant board game, and he's usually the one who comes with his like, what ifs, and we're like, and then let's go.
Calm down.
And you just make it happen.
Like that, he's like a huge Tim Burton lover. So we kind of like, we have these very intimate stories and intimate worlds and like down to earth stories, but then we also have this epic scale. That's where the kind of things like Star Wars inspiration comes in, and like some people, I mean, some you would call Star Wars a space opera, and some I would call Lost to Random almost like a dice opera.
Yeah,
Nice.
I remember having
opera.
I remember having Olov as an art director at Ghost Giant, and always when I asked for feedback, he sent me Star Wars references.
That's amazing.
But look at this, and it's like this vibe, you know, but you change it a bit more color, you know, but yeah, it's like this.
Like this, but fewer laser guns.
Yeah.
It's like set in a French picturesque village, and like really low key, and then like, look at this Star Wars clip. I'm sorry for everything, Leo. I promise to withhold any Star Wars references in the future.
Well, I mean, I guess it helps. Like you were saying, like, oh, you need to calm down. So we've heard this a lot where artists or the creative director would come in and like, I want to do this crazy thing. And here's my like absolutely insane reference. And then the technical artists are like, oh my God, how are we going to accomplish this?
Yeah.
That's where I come in.
Yeah.
I'm like in betweener. I'm in that category and I'm in that category. So it's a hard place to be.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about that? I think that's really interesting because you're actually kind of like both. You happen to be helping a lot with the direction and the art of the game and the concept art, but you also happen to be the person that making sure that it actually executes well into a game. So
yeah, I mean, I love painting and creating concepts and really like visualizing the world, but I also really enjoy like diving into how to create this world. Like how can we make it as amazing as in these concepts? How do we do it? Because it's not as fun to make amazing concepts that you can't like create. So I really enjoy finding out how can we do this? How can we create these meshes in an interesting way that also works performance-wise?
I think that's so interesting. Were the concepts like more of like a guide, or do you draw the concepts and then go like, we were trying to get as close to this as possible? Like we're trying to actually achieve this aesthetic.
I usually like first draft is just going wild with concepts, like super crazy concepts. And then I take those concepts and look at them and try stuff in 3D, and then I can figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then I sometimes make another batch of concepts that's closer to what will work in the final game. So it's a bit of a
iterative process. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about your background then, because where Unity has allowed people, artists, to also work inside of the game, where that just wasn't the case before. So programmers, developers, artists are all now working together, and you're kind of in a unique position where you're kind of both. But what came first? Were you an artist first, and then you became interested in game development? How did that happen?
I've always been an artist, I'd say. So I think, I was an artist first. My dad is a full-time freelance traditional artist. I was really inspired by him.
Wow.
But I also saw that it could be difficult sometimes economically. And I really liked playing games and was like, damn, this world looks amazing. How do they create this? And then I came into that kind of stuff and tried to start painting on the computer with a Wacom.
Yeah.
And then from there, I maybe I should try 3D as well. So it kind of merged from, like that.
Okay, nice. Perfect.
And it really lends so well, they really help out each other. Like I remember when I first started to dabble in 3D, I suddenly started to paint a little bit better. I felt like, because I could understand. I was so much more always constantly working with depth, and it's really nice also to just take a 3D image and do paint overs over. And don't you agree, Leo?
Yeah, it's really efficient to do 3D first and then paint over. It's super quick method.
So interesting. I never would have thought that. I would have thought it was the other way around.
No, it's so nice. I do that all the time. Yeah.
So you get the perspective locked and all of that, right? And then
the perspective and all the colors and reflections, but then you paint on top of everything and it doesn't look at all like it did before. But it's nice to have the fundamentals there and the lighting and the perspective.
And just the other day, I saw you working on another thing, and you in Unity you created all this. You created the environment, made this really nice lighting and all the. And then you print screen and started making this really gorgeous concept based on that, right?
That's classically a workflow.
Love that. It's that sounds like me.
It is.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think we all come from the same generation of game dev or game dev people, who have I think both me, Hasan, also have a very design or art kind of background, but we love game development, and we're well, how do we what's the next step, right? We have all this art, and also my parents were immigrants, and they're please don't go into art. And then and I was oh, the next step is games, because that involves computers, and I can trick my parents into
call it tech.
It's more advanced.
Yeah. So, but I would love to know how you actually decided. This game is really special because it looks like a really AAA game, and not to mention any other engines, but we often talk about indie games not having that very AAA feel, which is a weird thing to say. So what do you think is really a AAA game in your opinion? What makes a game AAA?
I'd say that's a hard one. A AAA game for me is a really detailed game, a really polished game with really high production value, and it's usually quite realistic in the art style, I'd say. But I'm not sure about the exact definition art-wise. I'm not sure if there is any. But for me, it's more about it's really high production value and it's really polished.
But to me, I can only say for me, indie is a lot about this is the only game company I've worked at. I went to the game assembly before that, where we made game projects together, and we had this really small the game assembly in Malmö, great school, by the way, shout out. I went there as an artist, and we had these teams of like 10 people or so of programmers and artists, and we would make around like 8 over the course of 2 years. We would make 8 tiny games to learn group work. And I remember coming to Zoink the first time. We were much smaller then, of course. It was so similar to working in those classrooms with just everybody could talk to each other. Everyone was open to ideas, and it was a very creative space. And to me, that's very indie, where it's small enough where people remember each other's names and can, like, what about this thing? What do you think about that? And we are starting to grow. I think we're still in the culture and the like we noticed that with Lost in Random now when we went from like 10 to 20 people to 50 or people or so. Of course, we need much more better structure, and there's I can see, while I haven't worked at a AAA studio, I can start to see this is probably what AAA studio this is what a game studio looks like before it turns AAA, perhaps. I think it's a lot about the culture and just I'm an artist, so I'm whimsical, and I just have a feeling of what is indie, but I can't like really put it into words. But I've had an indie time working on Lost in Random, at least.
Right.
Yeah.
And did a lot of that work and expansion happen remotely, especially towards the end of the project because of the pandemic? It's been a really curious time, and I'm also just very surprised and happy about how well things went, all things considered, and that it's surprisingly, you can work surprisingly well over distance thanks to our the great technical director Johan Frölander, who just so quickly put up this system and all the servers, and it's just I'm always amazed just how everything keeps working. All the commits and even how we communicating also, how that works over Zoom and all. Sorry, yeah. I lost the thread. The expansion has happened over the course of COVID also, like as Lost in Random, Lost in Random's needs grew, the crew grew, and we merged together with Image and Form and some other Gothenburg companies, and also companies in other cities, to form the Thunderful Group, which is now a larger studio with all these, like an umbrella studio with all these studios under it. So we've taken help from Image and Form, for instance, behind the SteamWorld games, who's feedbacked and looked at our game, and it's still very. So we still have our separate personalities as teams, and give each other know-how in tech and art and all of that. That's wonderful. I'm sure a lot of people are now wondering what the game actually looks like in action.
Oh yeah.
So maybe that's something we could do. We could jump into the game.
I actually have a build right here. Let's see. So we're gonna jump into Two Town, one of the first areas we made proper art for, and is one of the most iconic kind of Lost in Random cities. This is the most Isley of Lost in Random. But Even has just let me.
So I'm guessing you start in one town, make your way to Two Town, and that's where we're starting this demo off, right?
So we have so even starts out in one croft. One thing leads to another. She goes after her sister, and she ends up in the Valley of the Dice, where she meets Dicey, her living die companion with incredible powers. That's kind of her Jack-in-the-Box buddy who unleashes all these powers in combat. And now, once they've gotten to know each other a little better, they've gotten sucked up by a huge machine of some sort back into Random, and now they are in Two Town, in the big city for the first time, because all the other areas are restricted to all the different, like if you're a fiver, you're a fiver. You stay in 5 Tropolis, you don't go anywhere else. Let's see here. Let's just take a stroll down the street of Two Town. Then we worked a lot with the Cine Machine in Lost in Random with the cutscenes. we had Mattias Lorentzon, a great technical artist, who helped us. He would pull out the environment out of Unity into 3D Studio Max, make this kind of block out animation for cutscenes, and put it back into Unity, and translate all those different camera angles they had set up in Max into virtual cameras in Unity. And then he made a script to kind of merge those camera angles for Max, put into Max, and to keep working for animators, external animators, to keep working on those scenes. So a bit of a tricky workflow, but in the Cinema Machine in Unity, we could easily move around the audio and the particle effects, like in a video editor almost. So that was pretty neat.
Nice. Shout out to the Cinema Machine team. They're really awesome, and they have a very supportive team in the forums if you guys want their help.
Shout out. Yeah.
Are we going to be checking it out later? I think we are, right? Like taking a little bit at how you set up your animation and everything in the machine, or how you set up your cameras, maybe?
Actually, we do not have a scene for that prepared. What do you say, Leo? Do you have something like that ready?
I can probably show some stuff if it's interesting, but it's not my area of expertise. But I know how to open a cutscene and so on, and show stuff there.
Okay, cool.
See that rat?
Yeah.
You want to tell us about that rat, Leo?
No, wait with that.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, that rat, I made that rat. And we didn't have time to make an actual rat, so I took a character from the game and I optimized him. But he already looks a bit like a rat, like his face.
Oh, wow.
I will show him later.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So they use the same picture.
Right off the bat, this game just looks stunning. It's just so beautiful. And
So I just Ice is a little bit broken when you find him, so he has just a few pips. He has 2 pips, and with those pips I could roll a 2 and open the gate to what seems to be 2 town. And there's this strange ghost that has been leading even ever since the day she ran from home, and that's kind of the ghost that triggered her flight from Onecroft.
I see.
The only struggle I see here is the struggle of optimizing this vista.
Oh, yeah?
Because what you see, and now you don't see so much because we optimized it, but what you look down upon is actually the whole map that you can go around to, so you will be able to walk down to the city down here. And it was a big trouble to deactivate everything and then activate it when you get there. But it was a...
And I noticed as you walk towards it, it kind of fades in as well. I wonder how you achieve that. So like when you walk back away from it, it goes faint, and when you walk back towards it.
Yeah, we're using a fake fog kind of to hide the meshes because they're being cooled right here.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're loaded in.
They're loaded in, and then you...
So we utilize the fog for performance, kind of.
Yes, exactly. But it also has this like atmospheric effect, like you're coming closer and it's being revealed to you. So I feel like achieve 2 things there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You can see this clay, how like Holm, one of our 3D artists, working on making it look like you have like these thumbprints, some giant thumbprints on the buildings, and even like the stone, we wanted to feel like it's stone, but it's more like clay stone made to look like realistic stone in this world. Still, peculiar characters that we made to look kind of chiseled and sculpted as well.
So interesting. So what is the aesthetic behind the characters? So where's that coming from? I noticed they...
So, the characters, how they look in their design?
Yeah, their aesthetic, how they look. I know, like, is there a theme to, like, this one's a rat, the other one looked like more of like an older gentleman in a cloak?
There's actually a Star Wars story behind that. No, but,
of course there is.
No, but like when talking to Victor Becker, the art director, and like who lives in the end of Klaus, everybody just who lives in this world.
Yeah.
I think Star Wars is a huge inspiration, the way that you have all these strange aliens and they just appear and you don't in the very first the first movie, and you hope you don't know what they are, but they make sense anyway, and you don't need to really. I mean, of course, then the expanded universe and everything came, but it's kind of the same approach here. Like all this, you see this recurring kind of fish people are like, what are those? And like you don't know, maybe they're descendants of an old fairy tale fable character and something like that. So we love that. Like, it's a kind of like a world of this kind of watered down fairy tale creatures that have just kind of forgotten how to be a proper fairy tale almost, or in a way. So here we have
also a bit random.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely want to. Of course, randomness should seep through the characters and everything.
Yes,
and here you can see the in Two Town here when the queen rolls a 2 every day. When the queen rolls a die every day, you can see that decides what personality the characters will have today, and everybody has 2 sides. Oh. And the mayor has something nasty growing out of his hat that we don't see right now. But
this game has. Sorry.
This one's going from very gloomy to very happy to very gloomy now. What are you saying, Leo?
This game has so many like cutscenes, so it's almost like working for a movie and a game at the same time. Because I've been working with like lighting the cutscenes as well, because there are separate lights in the cutscene prefab. So we add some special extra fluff lighting in the cutscenes as well, and frame everything like a movie.
Right.
Yeah, it really feels cinematic. Like even just walking around the world, like.
Oh, it makes dicey doors where dicey.
If you go to the right, Olov, you can find the rat guy. I think not him.
Oh yeah, that's the rat.
Yeah, there's the rat guy.
I see. So you miniaturized.
I took his face and his back, and that's the rat.
I'm sure he doesn't mind.
No.
I'm sure there's some lore there as to why they look the same.
Yeah. And here I think we worked a lot with these dolly cams also to, like, you can see there's kind of to avoid to kind of lead the camera and avoid it getting cutting into walls when it's very narrow, because there's a lot of this guy's a cupboard.
This design is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's one of the favorite characters.
Manny Dex. He's actually acted by his voice acted by Brian Herring, who is the puppeteer of BB-8 in Star Wars.
What?
Wow. Yeah, so he actually also acts a guy who like a puppeteer in the game. So we had first-hand experience of it was kind of method acting, or like he knew how to talk to puppets so there's this crazy character who has lots of puppets around him that he makes up voices for him. Yeah.
The Star Wars connections run deep.
That was an accident. I will skip past some dialogue. And here you get your card binder.
And can you roll the dice at any time? Just like
no, not out in the environment. It's in Dice Battle where dice really start, where it's its moment to shine. But in the out environment is with you to solve puzzles, and he also is there to help even reflect about what's going on. And they chatter, banter, talk back and forth while exploring. So here's the tutorial for shopping cards, and you get a freebie. You get these card packs that are added to the shop, and
booster pack.
Yeah, booster pack. And so if I had enough coins, since I cheated my way here, I don't have any coins to buy cards with. But that's for another time.
Getting a lot of comments in the chat saying that the lights and colors are done in very good taste, that the game is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Nice, makes me happy.
Yeah, it's really you and you.
If you go back, there is going to show something I think is quite interesting. Yeah. And then you go forward. No, turn your camera. Go back to. I want to show the the light cooling. How the light fades in when you get close.
So you want me to backtrack?
No, go forward again.
Okay, right here. Right.
Yeah, so you can see this red light over there. Mm-hmm. Go further. There, it fades in.
Yes.
That's a performance solution, but it also fits the game. I think we used it intentionally in some places. because it adds to the like fairy tale feeling. It's another thing like the Vista, where we hit like how do you say that in English? We solve two things at the same time, like performance
two
and
birds in
visuals.
one stone.
Two birds, one stone.
Yeah, that's the English.
That's
Yeah.
the one. Yeah.
Morbid saying, come to think of it.
Yeah.
But I'm
How
actually,
fairy tales start.
yeah, but yeah.
Love these steps.
It kind of gives the lighting, that kind of fading out, in and out. It's kind of we took that a little bit from Ghost Giant, right? Like this feeling of big stop motion sets with these lights going on and off like a stage almost. But it's nice.
And those are
Interesting.
dynamic lights, I guess, since you're able to turn them on and off. They're not baked into the environment, right? They're just...
Yeah, they're dynamic.
Yeah.
Fully dynamic. Interesting fact is those stairs were the, I think, first asset we made in the game.
Oh, they look
nice.
amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So this
Props
is
to
Dice
Juno.
Battle. This is Dice Battle. So
Okay.
you shoot off this. You start out as this really this little child who's defenseless, and you just have your slingshot until you start shooting off these crystals. You gather them, you get energy, and then you have enough energy to spend cards. The more energy that you gather, the more cards appear. So you roll your dice, freeze time, and I got 2 tokens to spend. And as you progress through the game, you'll of course get your repair dicey, get more pips, be able to place more traps and attacks.
And how often can you roll the dice in a battle?
As soon as you have 1 card, actually.
Oh.
But it's so it's depending a little bit on what kind of battle you're in. If it's for instance, a board game where you want to advance the playing piece as much as possible, you might want to roll the dice faster and faster, more and more. But that is going to give you more enemies than you can handle, perhaps, because you roll too quickly and advance the board game too quickly. But yeah, if
such a unique approach to combat.
Yeah,
we really like to see that.
Cool. Yeah, we really try. That's fun. The fun thing with by like the complicated but fun thing with starting with art and the story and is that usually, like when seeing that dice and the girl in a giant board game, you don't immediately have a reference game to copy, or those come later on when you try to cement things. But to begin with, you start to like think about like, what's fun with rolling a dice and we wanted to capture this feeling of playing a board game but action packed and fluent but whenever you're ready, Leo, we have some more detailed art assets to look at.
I'm always ready.
I love how your slingshot turned into kind of a bow and arrow.
Cool. Actually, I cheated my way here, so I don't have that many cards right now. But I love the bow. And we have this really nice shade. I should have checked with Matthias Lorentzon, who made this shader before. But there was like those kind of black goo shooting out of the cards, spawning enemies. That's like a recurrent thing for the antagonist, or like the adversaries in the game, the Queen's minions.
I noticed you can throw cards from your hand, right? So you can discard cards?
No, actually, it's then you want to roll again, or you can, when you progress through the game, you're gonna get these golden pins that will allow you to save a card until later in case you roll too low to roll that card immediately.
But now we cheated here, so we don't have all the cards that we usually have at this point, right?
Yeah, we're missing some bombs. But that's the gist of it. Do you feel like you want to look at something else in the environment, Leo, or do you want to start looking at how your workflow?
Yeah, maybe we can look at the pictures I have prepared here.
So you like, we'd love to see your process, like your art process, right? And I think you can show that to us in the screenshots and in editor.
Yeah, first some screenshots actually, and then I'll show some stuff in the editor.
Perfect.
So can you see my screen?
So we'll switch to Leo's screen now.
Like a sketch.
Okay.
Okay, now it's on my screen.
Yes, we see it.
Cool. So I want to talk a little about my workflow when creating these environments. So how I started, as I mentioned earlier, is like just sketching. And I sometimes prefer just sketching traditionally because then I get a break from the computer. So this is a very early sketch of the level Dice Yard. And here you can see a first initial test in the editor. What I call this is a art slice. It's like an isolated section of a scene that is distinct for the level.
We can make those for each level, right? Like as a concept art, almost for each, like one craft.
Yeah, it's like a sketch for the whole level, you could say. So we push it as much as possible and try out different lighting situations. And in this stage, I just made some like basic meshes myself that look like shit, but they have the right shape. And it works pretty well. And while I'm working at this, our prop artist, in this case, Juna Holm, creates the final assets that we know that we're gonna need. And so when I feel satisfied with the slice and the colors match with the story kind of, and I'm ready to move on, then we replace those assets with more final assets. This is not final, but it's more final than this. These were the pictures I could find from that time. I wish I took more work in progress pictures, actually.
So every level has its own kind of unique assets that will make up the foundation and the look of that world. Right. And then you might borrow from the other worlds, right? To like keep building.
So here are the main ones, the dice monuments, right? That's the foundation.
Exactly. Yeah, we focus on the most important elements, and then we just make a small slice. Because then we can also figure out, during that process, we can figure out if we need more assets or if we can scale off some stuff. Because we had limited resources in the beginning in the art team, so we wanted to be effective on the asset front. So this was a really good way to do that. And in the end, the level turned out like this, which is quite different, but it's still a really nice process, and we iterate during production. I mean, the levels are created in different phases, I'd say, like a first pass of the whole level after making the art slice, and then a second pass, third pass, fourth pass, final pass. And during that process, we always iterate on the things we don't like. For example, on this picture, in this slice, what we didn't like with this was that there was too much noise and too much silhouettes and distracting the player from knowing where to go. And this look is much more simple for the mind, less chaotic.
And did you say that this was a combination of 3D and 2D, or is this shot fully like painted?
This shot is from the level, and it's
fully in game.
Yeah, this is in game. 3D.
Okay.
The backdrop is something I painted, but
yes,
that's the only.
So do you paint the skyboxes at all in the game as well, or is it just for these screenshots that you paint the backgrounds?
No, I paint the backdrops for the game. Yeah, I can show you later in editor how they look like and how we work with them.
Yeah, it's really nice in the intro where you see when you would present, over like the Palace of Sixtopia with like this different. Maybe that could be fun to show us. But it's like this matte painting almost of a palace, and then a 2D wall in front of that, like some parallaxing going on when the camera kind of goes down past.
Yeah, we can look at that maybe. Yeah. And another thing I think is really interesting to show off is these kits. It's basically how we made the environments and how we were able to make these huge environments with limited resources. And I think this approach was quite logical because we knew the game was going to have this crafted look. And we knew we had to make a lot of assets, so we were thinking maybe we can make kits and then merge them together. So this is the clay kit, you could say.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And this is the foundation house pieces that I made a long time ago, without the windows and stuff, because the windows and the extra clay pieces is something we usually add in game. So we don't have to add the doors and windows where we don't need them for performance reasons. But
And-
the building is merged together, but the rest is loose pieces.
Okay, so you have a bunch of building blocks essentially that you're creating for each aesthetic, and each world from 1 to 6 have their own like building blocks that the level designer can, or the set dresser, whoever's building the environment, can just take and use and kind of shape in their own way.
Yeah, kind of. But these buildings are like the bigger chunks are usually assembled in a 3D program because of performance. But we also have these loose pieces. So if you want like a unique look on a specific house, you can just add something on top.
Okay, so it's a mix of things. So some things are fully built out in 3D, but then you're given a kit to kind of add a bit of customization here.
Yeah, there's lots of customization.
That's nice. That's great.
Yeah.
It works really well for like the sense of this built theater, like the miniature set, almost like if you would build an environment for your miniatures, board game miniatures, for instance, you would have this many little repetitive pieces kind of building on each other. So I feel like that really reinforced the feeling of hand-built world.
Yeah, it does. I think so. And I have lots of pictures of this because I'm really passionate about these kids, because I thought they were really nice to work with.
Yeah.
This is the teapot kit. And with these, we can create stuff like this.
Those are giant teapots.
Yeah,
The way
giant teapots.
Their houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all made of the same
T-town.
material. And you can make unlimited combinations. And
looks like
this one is one of my favorite. We needed something for a town that's, I don't know, spoilers, 5 town, Olov?
5 Tropolis. No, it's a factory world that's been repurposed by the Queen. It used to be the home of the card makers who made all these gorgeous cards that you saw, and they put the power in them, and they're almost like these revered saints. But rumor has it that the factory has fallen into decay and that the Queen has repurposed it for something.
Yeah, and a factory needs a lot of like metal and steel and stuff like that. So I made this really simple kit, and with this we could create stuff like this. It's just like crafted together in a separate 3D program. And with this, you can see like examples of how we work with them in the environment. So you can see all the houses there. And here.
I can't wait to dive into the lighting later. So
yeah,
I think later in the show, for everybody watching, we're going to talk a bit about how this lighting was achieved and optimized.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. And this is interesting because this forest is also made of the same material, actually. That's it about the kits. Actually.
Yeah, I love the diversity in environments. I can tell there's really, you're going on an adventure here. You're really going from one place to the other, and I think that's something that makes it so exciting. I'm sure people in chat can't stop. It's reminding them of all sorts of things like Alice in Wonderland and different things that they grew up with. So I think you've achieved that.
It really is a big soup of tributes from different people. It's but also of course our own inspiration, our own style. We also
mainly
have
Star Wars.
Sorry, you go ahead.
This is an interesting picture because one of the sides is HDRP and one is URP. So the one to the right is HDRP and to the left is URP.
And that's a perfect segue to talk about what you did with your project. You started in HDRP, correct?
Yeah, we started in HDRP because we knew we wanted to push the realism and use volumetric fog. And for us, that was the best solution at the time. But then we realized we need to release the game on all platforms at the same time. So for Gen 4 and Switch, it was not really optimal to use HDRP. So we decided to change the pipeline to the Universal Render Pipeline, URP. So this photo is from a test I did. I was working in a separate branch and trying out URP and tried to push the visuals to see if we could achieve a more HDRP-ish look, even though it's much more performant.
You would test it on me, who's not as technical at all as you are, and like just test me. Like you would shut off. You wouldn't show me which one was URP and HDRP, and like, you tell. And at one point, I was like, "Is this HDRP? No, it's a URP."
Oh,
and,
perfect.
And when you,
I love that. That's the best way to test. So
yeah, it is.
It's when I test design stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to ask someone who doesn't know anything about design.
Yeah,
it's the only way. That answers Jaden Dragon in the chat. Says, yes, this will be out on Switch. And actually, this is exactly what we're talking about, why the graphic pipeline was chosen this way, so that it could be on Switch and you can enjoy it at this beautiful quality.
Yeah. Also, and I have to say that I'm it's one of my personal favorites to see when I've been playtesting it, and I was like, it's so cozy to have such a, like, even, I mean, like it's so cozy to have a big game on a tiny screen like that, and it runs really well too. So it's When I let the game rest for a couple of months, then I will get it on Switch.
Yeah, I thought it was a really fun challenge to push the URP because we had the HDRP as a benchmark, kind of, because we started high, but then we had to push it, and I thought that was really interesting. But we had to use some, like we had to download assets from the asset store, and we had to really try out lots of different stuff and write in-house solution for some visuals.
I love how you're always shooting for something. So at first, you had the concept art, you were shooting for that. You're like, let's make the game look more like the concept and use the concept as an iterative process. And then you had the HDRP like benchmark to shoot towards as well. And so you always had something driving the visuals. I think that's a really great way to work. And then you mentioned the asset store. Can you tell us a bit more about what you use from the asset store to help achieve that?
Yeah, I remember that when we changed to URP, either we were not satisfied with the ambient occlusion there, or it did not exist, I don't remember, but we used a asset store ambient occlusion HBAO, and we used a decal asset because URP did not have decals and we really wanted to have decals. And we used a asset for like planar reflections because that as well was not supported in URP at the time, from what I remember. And that's something we already had implemented in HDRP, so we really needed to keep that. That was the nice thing about starting with HDRP, is that we were kind of forced to push the visuals a lot when we changed to URP, because we didn't want to scrap something that was really important. Because the planar reflections, for example, is really important visuals in our dream sequences. Because you're basically just walking on water, and the reflections there plays a really essential part. So that's where these assets play in nicely.
I think what's nice is that you knew what to look for because you had that benchmark, so you knew specifically what assets you needed to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that made it a bit easier.
But the most interesting asset, I think, is the fog asset.
Okay.
Because we used the HDRP volumetric fog, but we could not port that to URP. It proved to be too difficult. So instead of doing that, we downloaded the asset Aura, and we modified it to work for URP because it's made for HDRP. And according to Daniel Pick, it was easier to port that, so we went for that instead.
Okay.
And we also modified it a bit to our needs because we wanted it to look a bit more like the HDRP fog. So we added like these, one second. you see these like gradients on the sun. It's like darker there and lighter there. It's because the fog is dimming the sunlight if the fog is more dense. And that was something that Aura was missing, for example. So we added some changes.
By the way, this is Threedom, one of the 6 realms where a civil war is raging between 3 royal triplets who are each blaming each other for the death of the murder of their father.
Oh, wow.
And you're there to kind of hash it out between them or try to figure out what really happened. And so you're moving a lot through trenches throughout the level and taking cover. And
Are those giant statues the triplets?
It's there. So the queen has provided them each with a giant colossi every day when the queen rolls the die that decides which one of them will get to fight and which is as their turn this day. So she would roll a die. Maybe get maybe it's, what is it? 3 to 4 is the Baroness, and you hear a town crier crying out, "It's the Baroness today! Who wins the roll?"
That's amazing.
But when you arrive there with Dicey, when Evelyn arrives there with Dicey, she quickly realizes that I can actually break the system and affect these robots and make them move even more times a day now that I can just go to these platforms, roll Dicey, and you see this giant.
The queen is funding this civil war, essentially.
What are you saying? That's propaganda. She's very generous too. It's a very safe way to fight a war. Just cash it out with this giant robot. Nobody gets crushed underneath. No.
No, not at all. I just want to shout out Raphael Ernelston, who is the creator of Aura 2. It's a wonderful asset, and we'll post a link to it in the chat below for anybody who's curious. And we just got that question as you were mentioning it. BitGamey asked, did you use any volumetric lighting assets? So did you use any of the volumetric lighting from Aura, and not just the fog?
We used only the fog, actually.
Only the fog. Okay.
In the end, we tried the volumetric aspects of it, like on lights and stuff, but it proved to be a bit too heavy.
Okay. So did you achieve?
We faked it with our own shaders and stuff.
Nice.
And it worked.
That's probably
so
quite optimized.
Went for that. Yeah. And here is the level without fog. Here you can see that the fog has an essential part in the art style.
I think it's really stunning without the fog too, though.
Oh, it's beautiful either way.
It's harsh.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a completely
Dark.
different feel. Yeah. But that looks like straight out of a comic book or something like that.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing. I wonder, was the fog like an essential component of all the levels in the game? Or is it very specifically to this, what did you call it? Threedom?
Yeah.
I'd say it played important part in all the levels, but in this level it was very important to nail this gradient look of a really, I don't know, early evening kind of.
A really strong dawn.
Yeah, exactly. So this level really depends on that gradient looking great. But I mean, the other levels are also quite dependent on the outer fog. But in the dreams, we actually use another fog called Zoink fog.
Called what, sorry?
The Zoink fog. It's an in-house fog. We actually made our own fog because we had to make a different solution. Make a different solution for Switch. So we made a in-house fog that I can show you here. 1 second. So this is a screen-based fog. We tried to make it look as close as possible to the Aura fog, but it proved difficult. But I think we came pretty close.
I think this is a great teaser for what we're going to see right after the break. But right now we're just going to go on a quick 5-minute break. So stick around, and when we come back, we're going to look at the difference between the the fog that was made for the PC and consoles, and then the fog that you did for Switch, right? And then we'll compare the two and how you achieved the similar look. But until then, we'll be back in 5 minutes, so stick around.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And we're back. Welcome, everyone. I hope you got a snack. Looks like a lot of you joined us. So if you're from Europe, you're probably joining us for dinner. Welcome. Let us know what you're having for dinner. And if you're from North America, you're probably joining us for lunch or a snack. And I'm having jelly babies, which I just explained to all of the dark pasta jelly babies. So those who know, let us know in chat if you know about them and which one is your favorite color and what you're eating right now.
Food is very important to us on the stream.
Yeah, we're just hungry.
First, game second.
Yeah.
It is important.
Yeah. So we have a ton of questions from chat. So I'm just going to ask just a few of them. But people keep mentioning that this game seems like it's inspired by Alice, which we were just talking about this before the stream started, actually. So I'm so glad so many people mentioned it. For those who don't know, I think Olov mentioned that it is inspired by American Mickey's House, which is why I brought the box and put it in the background. This is also one of my favorite games.
Yeah, it's I mean, I know Klaus Lindgeled has. I have to be honest. I actually played Alice together with my brother when I was a kid. I was too afraid to play it myself back then, but I remember very clearly many of the scenes, and it's like just like seeing Nightmare Before Christmas the first time when I was a kid. I remember seeing the trailer, and I went to like, was it some kind of preschool or some kind of school. I must have been preschool because my teachers were very upset because I was drawing these very nasty creatures, and they had me sent off to a child psychiatrist.
Oh my!
But I aced it for the record.
Yeah.
but it didn't help in the long run. No, but it's so it's definitely something that I brought with me from my childhood to the game. But I know also Klaus Lindgeled has played Alice himself without watching his brother do it.
Yeah. It's such an inspirational. I think that game it came out around the same time as the popularity of all of the claymation stuff and Tim Burton, Tom Selleck kind of animation stuff. So those kids who grew up on that became very whimsical, slightly morbid children, adults and game devs, I think, which was very clear from chat, which I wanted to bring up. I also wanted to ask a couple other questions.
There's a question from Sijlar. Leo, you had mentioned earlier that working on this game was kind of like working on a film and a game at the same time. So this question is quite relevant. Just got here. If I study film animation, will it help me get into gaming animation?
That's a good question.
I think.
Yeah.
What do you say, Leo?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Animation as animation, and especially for making these kind of games, like more cinematic games, I think it's a bit the same, but you have to think a bit differently in some aspects. It depends. If you work with cutscene animations, it's basically like film, I'd say, right, Olov?
But of course for combat you can still use the same skills, but the implementation can be the tougher part. But usually you'll have like a tech artist or someone getting you into the workflow of getting your animations in engine, and so it's a really great place to start film animation. Absolutely. Like when we look at folios, for instance, we do mainly look at just how it looks and how it feels, and then we'll figure out, as like someone who's used to working in 3D in Maya might have to start working in Max on one of our projects, and that'll be fine, because it's usually the same kind of it's very similar type of programs that you work with in the end, or Blender for that matter. Yeah.
And from speaking to many other developers, I think I've also come to realize that one of there are different constraints for working as a video game animator, right? Such as the number of frames you have to use per animation. That might depend on where this animation is taking place. So if it's part of a combo attack, you might want it to be like, okay, create your animation, but make it within these number of frames and within this time, and then it'll have to transition to this with this many frames. And so there's just different constraints to think about, but definitely the skills would transfer. Yeah. Great question, Sijlar. Thank you.
Thank you.
BitGamey also asked, was URP used over built-in because of performance ability to look better, or something else? We're kind of answering that right now. Maybe we can jump back in and start talking about that with Leo.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason was performance. That was the main reason for like figuring out if it was possible to use it in the first place. And then when we started investigating and trying out different ways to push the visuals, we came to the conclusion that it still looks really good. So why not just go for it instead of like having to work on two separate pipelines, or maybe release the game on some platforms later on. It was just complicated to do it that way. So we just went for URP and took the gamble.
And I can really, I feel like I can really also, like I'm not as technical, but like I get the feeling that you can get some, like really nice, artified, like artsy look from technical limitations, just like we found out in Ghost Giant when we were working in VR and had really rough technical limitations and still wanted this kind of handcrafted look that looked vaguely realistic. And it worked a lot with baked lighting and hand-painted textures and this kind of dark space around this lit kind of dollhouse world. And wouldn't you say the same goes for Lost of Random with this kind of painted look with all the fogs and the lighting and
Yeah, I think for me it's, I mean, I don't know why, but I think it's exciting to work with limitations in some way, because when you succeed, the satisfaction is extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, especially for this game. Like we said, is like it looks, when you were showing the difference between the two pipelines, I definitely couldn't tell. And it's just really impressive technologically that you were able to achieve this. We can jump to Leo's screen so we can actually see what we're talking about with the fog and everything like that.
I remember you had also mentioned, like when creating the fog for Switch specifically, you also had these 3D planes that created these extra color splashes to cover up some details as well, and that also helped with performance. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, those, we call them fog planes. They're an essential part in the look of the game, I'd say, but also in the performance. I can show you, this is a very obvious fog plane, like super bright. But the reason why it's there is actually because of performance. Because a new area is being loaded like here. Because it was too expensive. It was if it was to be loaded like here. So we added this fog plane to hide loading. And that was a really easy, fast, efficient solution for us to push the performance in some aspects, because the time frame was tight and we had to like figure out something. And this solution worked really well in these like corridors with these obvious gates, you know.
Yeah,
really nice beacon, leading beacon. Speaking of two birds on stone.
Yeah,
and designers.
Yeah, because this worked really well as visuals as well, I think, and also I'm hiding stuff as well. I can show you one case here. These are fog planes that are activated on HDRP, so these are supposed to be hidden right now. And then we have these separate fog planes for the Switch. They're really bright here because we had to work with some extreme values sometimes.
So what is the difference between those two fog planes, the HDRP ones and the URP ones?
It's just the color, actually, because we had to make sure that they blended well with the background fog.
I see.
Because we want to sell the illusion that they are part of the fog, when actually they are just they're just planes.
I see. So it just resulted in a different aesthetic, moving from one to the other, so you just had to adjust the...
Yeah, you can see here that it doesn't blend so well with the buildings and stuff, like you can see them pop in a not so nice way. But these fog planes also played a big part in, as I said, the visuals, because you get this almost painted layer on top, and you can really have some unique splashes of color in some places and lead the player in a way. And this specific level does not have so much of that, sadly. But you can see this one is quite obvious, and it's leading the player quite clearly, I think.
Sorry.
Sorry?
Sorry. Now continue. Yeah. Sorry.
Just another interesting thing about, just gonna go back a bit to the Zoink fog, is that we achieved to we actually faked the volumetric fog a bit, even though it's a screen-based fog. Our graphical programmer Daniel Quick, which is amazing, he made a solution for actually creating like volumetric fog volumes, kind of, even though it's screen-based. So you can see this fog here. That was something created specifically for faking the volumetric density volumes. So we have these, let me see if I can find it.
Oh,
so yeah, you can see these are actually like volumetric fog volumes, which is quite, I think it's quite cool to create these in a screen-based fog, because it's not something I've seen before. So I think Daniel made a really good job creating this, and also adding this moving layer on top, like this layer mask, making it look.
So it's a screen-based shader essentially. So it'll show up no matter where you are.
Yeah, it's a screen-based fog. I don't know more than that. I'm not so
no worries.
Informed about the technicals about this.
For the fog planes, I was wondering what those actually are. So it's a mesh plane with a shader applied to it and a color, or is that something?
Exactly. So it's a shader with a depth node on it.
Okay.
So it takes the depth of the level and applies it to the shader, and then we have this fade towards the edges. And then we can change this is a separate material, I think. So the only problem with this is that we had to make lots of materials, because we didn't have to make a like specific component for this that could change it just locally. So we made lots of materials. That's one downside with it, but it was really easy to work with other than that. So we can change these values and how soft the fade should be.
And the closer you get to it, the more it fades away. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, exactly. So you never see that it's plain.
Yeah, we just wanted to show, talking about style and this the painterly look, and we talked about the characters and claymation, of course, previously when looking at meshes and stuff, and our concept art process has been also working with clay. So here's the Shadow Man, who actually appears in this level in Sculpey clay. So it would be a really nice way for Victor and Leo to get into the and also Juno Holm to get into the thinking of trying to mimic clay in the game. Start out working with actual clay.
Maybe we can full screen Olov.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
It's a bit difficult to see. This one isn't, but he actually this guy kidnaps kids in Threedom and puts them in his rib cage. It's really nasty. And this one isn't actually. He's 2 years old, I think, but he hasn't been put in the oven yet, so he's you can still like work on him. And we have.
And do you do all the characters in clay first?
No, but some of the most important, for instance, Odd. This one is by Victor Becker. So this is one of the first. This is one of the first concepts of Odd, even sister, and he just had a flow and going and wanted to, and like he really wanted, because Odd is a very sincere, or like very, she has a very she has a lot of soul, and he wanted to so working in 3D directly felt and in clay felt more natural, and like trying to capture a more honest look of the character, and that helped working with real material. He loves working with graphite also, and that kind of is where he starts. And just this constant trying to translate traditional art into video games, and
that one is amazing.
Also. That's incredible.
Look how detailed that looks. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I love that nose. So
Yeah,
perfect.
it's hell to. He was really scared of putting it in the oven because anything can happen. It can break and stuff. It has actually. He's lost a little tail here, but we will repair.
Oh,
it.
I see. Part of the cape.
Did you use a photogrammetry to scan afterwards, or it's just for modeling purposes?
And we did try out a few things, but it turned out easier to just go into ZBrush immediately because that program is so much like sculpting in clay anyway. So it was just adding
Yeah, that was an.
Oh my god!
Oh my god.
This one is by Klaus Lingelet,
What?
the head of development. He's the one who actually taught us working with Sculpey. We would have this like afterworks. We're like, come, I'll bring clay tools and let's make models. So I made the Shadow Man one actually. So we sat together one Christmas and just made clay figurines.
So how useful was this to actually develop? Can you tell us all the different ways that modeling these characters out of clay helped? Because most people would just do some concept art and then some references and then like model it together. So what difference did this actually make?
It's a really great way of getting into just the feeling of how does clay behave and how do we mimic that in the game. I think especially for our artists who have one foot in 2D in the 2D world and the 3D world. But what do you say, Leo? How was working with clay been for you? Did you make any clay figures in your process?
Yeah, I had like a ball of clay at my desk that I could play around with, and it worked really great as reference for creating the materials. I think I used to see how it reacted when you did different stuff. So for me, it was really useful. Maybe, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Should we show the character scene, Olaf? Or is it spoilers?
No, we could go through the character. That's a good question. No, I can show a few. You don't have to. There's a whole row of all the different characters throughout the game. We could easily just go in and see what prefab do they belong to, and what's the name of them, and how do they look in what kind of lighting. But
we'll wait before jumping to the screen. You can let us know when you want us to cut to the screen.
Okay, yeah.
I'll tell you when I'm ready.
Yeah. You can show some of the do not show those big guys. You can show the maybe. But
okay, I'll hide some.
You can show. Oh yeah. You can show some of the.
Chat is so funny. Well, look, we promised to look away.
Don't look. Yeah, I can show some generic ones.
Yeah, show some of the street NPCs. Yeah.
Maybe wait one second.
It's really amazing, guys. Don't know what to say.
You're all missing out big time right now.
That one.
I guess you're gonna have to buy the game and find out.
I forgot that scene.
I'm doing some fast hiding here.
No, but
okay, yeah, this row, Olaf,
yes, yeah, sure.
Not there, not there. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You go ahead. You can go close-ups and kind of strafe along the. Yeah, you have.
Okay, so now we can switch over.
Yeah. No, it's
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's over.
There's odd. You can actually compare the.
There we go.
There's odd and directly kind of translated from.
Oh wow!
Nice. Oh wow.
So accurate.
So that's a sister of Even. So she's a little bit more anxious and a little more. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yes.
It's
good.
And there's Bernie, one of their childhood friends, one of the wackier characters, and Dicey, of course. Yeah, I don't know what to say other than it's tricky making also these clay characters. You don't want them to lose life and warmth just because they're made out of clay. And
right.
I don't know exactly how they do it, but of course, just looking at studying the materials in like a movies, for instance, is just a really great way of just they of course make even clay characters or 3D printed characters look alive.
And just the amount of characters here, it's just staggering. I wonder, when it comes to animating them, do they all share? Do many of them share the same rig for animation, just to make things easier?
I think so. Like these two, I think share the same ish. We have lots of generic characters that look similar but have different clothes and outfits. and so on. So I think when the scale is similar and the proportions are similar, they share the same rig. But we have lots of different proportions on our characters, so I think we have lots of different rigs as well. Do you say hello?
Yeah. Like we have been, we have tried to be smart about it, but of course they are, as you can see, they are quite differing in kinds and shapes. So every sort of type of creature has its own rig, of course. Women and men both have the same rig.
I don't really dare go more to the right, actually.
Okay.
I'll go back to Threedom.
That's
very good. I think we can go back to the earlier to a scene where you can show us more about the lighting effects. So we can talk about maybe the dynamic light, the gradient sky, the ambient lighting.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So as we're transitioning to that scene, I'm wondering, I guess many people like to ask, are you using forward or deferred rendering? Are you using baked lights or dynamic lights? Maybe you can tell us what combination of solutions you use.
Yeah, I think I'm quite sure we used forward rendering because that's what we needed to use because Switch didn't support deferred, from what I remember. What was the other questions? Sorry.
The combination you used of like baked lighting versus dynamic lighting.
Oh yeah, we tried early on baked lighting. I came directly from Ghost Giant, and on Ghost Giant I baked all the levels in the game. But it proved to be much easier to do that on Ghost Giant because it's a much more stylized game and smaller levels and so on.
You have had to have a lot of. Sorry, I know you had a kind of strict lighting budget. That we were like, more lights here. Like, can we paint this thing with more lights? Like, God, then we gotta cut this thing.
I'll talk
it's like,
more about that soon.
Yeah, so I just of my frustration with optimizing.
I don't know why Leo turned into Bane there, but let it slide.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, Olov, yeah. I'll talk about that soon.
Again, I'm sorry for everything.
No, that's fine. So we tried out fake lighting, but we came to the conclusion that when we had so huge levels and we had so many dark parts in the level, it proved to be a bit too, like memory-wise, the textures needed to be huge if we wanted to have the detail that we wanted. But also another like huge thing for us is that we wanted to keep the specular highlights on the meshes, because that's like one of the key parts in our art style. But when we bake, these disappear in the dark parts, which is a shame, we thought. So we were like, let's try dynamic lighting instead. So we actually have fully dynamic lighting. And the way we solve the performance issues that comes with that is with a number of solutions actually. Maybe I can go through them. So one of the big things that we did early was that we turned off all the shadows on all the environment meshes in the levels. So none of these meshes that you see here have shadows actually turned on. Let me just hide this. So what we did instead to fix that, because having no shadows is not so nice, especially in a level like this. So what we did was, I'm just gonna find the folder. We actually created what we call the shadow blocks. It's like a shadow proxy, so it's a cube that's set to shadows only, as you can see here. But it's actually just a cube. And then we have
a Borg cube. It looks kind of like a bit ominous in the background.
Yeah, it does. And so with these, we placed these in the level to fake the shadows coming from the buildings. And since the levels have quite a lot of meshes and shapes, you don't really see all the straight shadows coming from these boxes. Here you can see how it looks without. And there is with.
Oh wow, huge difference.
Yeah. And on top of that, we have a restricted shadow distance on the sunlight, since we don't need so long distance because of the fog. I mean, you can see there. You can see the shadow disappearing. Like, you see?
Yeah.
1 second. And another thing we did to push the performance even more is we made a in-house script that we call the cull light script.
Mhm.
What it does is it culls the
Kind of like painting with shadows, or like I think it adds this kind of painterly feeling that you are using these cubes to create the shadows. Yeah, like instead of.
How are these cubes actually making the shadows? Like, are they? Is it literally cubes are blocking out the light, and that's what you're doing? Like they're just
the cubes are blocking out the
they're
light,
just literally okay.
but they're set to shadows only, so you don't see the
You don't
actual
see-
cubes.
I see.
But they simulate the shadow, and with that we kind of paint the shadow map of the level, because it's much more performant doing it this way than having shadows on the actual buildings. And it looks, I mean, you don't see, I don't think anyone would have noticed, to be honest. And you can place them in a really specific way. So if I want it to be a shadow over there, I can
that's
just place a
interesting.
cube, but actually the building is like going over there.
Mhm.
So that's
So
a
it's
nice.
very ominous to just be the players walking through this world, not knowing that there are these giant floating cubes
Yeah.
all around them.
Yeah. All
The
looking
real
at you.
antagonist behind it all.
Exactly.
It's actually very
shadows
fitting
in the
since the
dark.
antagonist is a dark cube
Yes,
owned by
exactly.
the queen.
Mm.
The plot thickens.
Okay.
So just back to this cool thing
Yeah.
that I talked about earlier. So without this, all the lights in the levels, or not all of them, but like, I don't remember the specific number, but like 30 of them were rendered at the same time, and that was not so performant. So we created this cool light script that cools the light at a specific distance. So you can see this is the transition from where the light is being faded, and this is the inner ring here. It's the distance when the light is supposed to be at 100%.
Okay. So you essentially customized all the lighting, added more like features or more control.
Yeah, we kind of had to because of performance. But this also proved to be a nice visual feature, as I said earlier. In some levels, when we wanted the lights to fade in when you got closer, to push this what do you say? What's the word? The theatrical feeling. Yeah. And when we worked in HDRP, most of our lights were actually point lights with shadows, which is quite expensive. So what we have done in URP instead is we have changed all the point lights to spotlights instead. Because URP also did not have shadows on point lights. And
Right.
We needed shadows,
All right.
lights.
Yeah.
So we combined having spotlights, and then on some places we used these point lights with shadows off as some extra fluff, because without it looks a bit weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, how many of these lights were you able to have, like, in a scene at one point? Did you have to shut off certain lights when moving into? Did you have to unload lights and reload lights, specifically for the Switch version as well?
We turned off some like specific lights in the Switch version that were just like there for only like extra visual stuff. So we turned off some lights for Switch, but also for Gen 4 like PlayStation, Xbox. But this color system worked really well, so we didn't have to do so much on that front. Because when you're outside this range, the light is turned off and it's not being rendered at all.
Okay.
So with this in place, we could have more lights. But we were really restricted with our use of lights, as Olov mentioned earlier. Like I wish I could like place lights everywhere, but we only added lights where it was really necessary to guide the player.
It was a really great example also where like technical limitations makes the presentation more clean and especially on Switch, if you play on a small screen, it's nice to have just this like not so much messy stuff going on and I feel like you really like utilizing the lights the best way you can when you just have a few to that you're allowed to use per scene.
Yeah, you use them wisely. You do.
Epic Big Dude in chat just said, lights are the bane of my existence. I never know how to make it performance and have a well-lit scene, but this is giving me a lot of good ideas. So thanks, Leo.
Nice. That makes me really happy.
Helping the community.
And going from this to maybe ambient lighting, because it's related to what I talked about just now. Like, because we couldn't have so many lights, like in this corridor, it's quite dark here. Not super dark now because of the ambient lighting. So because of the amount of lights we could have was not super many, we had to make sure that you still could see in the shadow parts of the level. So we worked a lot with the ambient lighting. 1 second, I'm just gonna find this. So what we did is we have this sky gradient that works as the ambient lighting in the scene. And what it does is, like, the top color lights the top of the meshes, the middle color lights the side of the meshes, and the bottom color lights the bottom parts of the meshes, as you can see here. And this played a big role in like making the dark parts of the levels pop, adding this artistic feel to it, kind of.
Yeah.
And what I have to say that this is one of my favorite parts of artistic, like one of my favorite parts of the game, where you start out running through these shadowy kind of ruins, and you get the notion of some like action going on beyond these walls, and it's before you realize it's a war zone. Sorry for the spoilers, but then you get out on that main square that we saw initially with this really stark dawn, like beaming at you, and these giant robots above you, and it's a really powerful contrast moving between those two.
Yeah, it's a game of contrast. Yeah.
Like looking at this game, I don't know if this is an inspiration or not, but I get a lot of Psychonauts vibes as well. Is there any maybe it's in the character designs and the fact that each world is so different and there's always like some kind of set piece or event going on? Is there anything?
I actually like. I'm sorry. I actually have to play the first Psychonaut.
Okay.
And
I think you'd love it.
I think I do. I know artists, and Klaus likes it really a lot. Head of development. He really loves Psychonaut also, and I know he's kind of buddies with Tim Schafer. I hear. They met a couple of times, but we have artists looking at we study all these kinds of different games. Just what have, like, for UI, for instance, just to get ideas. And I remember one time one of our UI artists looked at the UI of Psychonauts.
Oh, nice.
Not sure how much of that translated into the final UI, but definitely all of these kinds of games and movies that people mention, there's going to be at least one of us that, like, I love that thing, and I totally
advantage of having a diverse big team.
Yeah, but for me, I'm kind of one-dimensional. Star Wars? No, I love this.
Just Star Wars.
I do look at other stuff, but looking forward to trying out Psychonauts 2 and 1 as well. Yeah,
I think what made me think about it was the fact that, like, if there was a scene in Psychonauts where you're in somebody's head and you're in a war scene. So when you mentioned that, like, coming out into a civil war, I was like, oh yeah, it reminds me of Psychonauts.
Yeah, I remember the initial spark, just this image of us talking, like, just trying to push these different themes of all these worlds, and like, we've gone from this intimate kind of city, cobbled streets, and like what comes next? Like, oh, it should be something like an open landscaping. Again, this game of contrasts and what was exciting to come to next, and this wide open landscape, and these again play with scale, these huge colossi, and just and the next level is more. I won't spoil that, but it's more.
Yeah, don't spoil. I want to play this. I don't want.
Yes.
I don't want. I want to play this.
Don't spoil it. Yeah, but we really work with.
I'm waiting
Compass overall, I think.
like jump into this game. Yeah,
but there's like subtle contrast everywhere. I'd say like we wanted to make all the different small zones distinct in a way, so that you know where you have been and you know where you are going, kind of. So we have like I call it the pipe streets. There's lots of pipes and stuff, and this is the balcony.
Then we have the Queen's giant spider. Well, everything's giant in this game, but then we have the spider gondola that the Queen and the nanny travels.
Oh, this is so cool. That's
so you have
beautiful.
this kind of funicular railways that are kind of like this infrastructure only for the royals, the Sextopians, to use. So you can see this giant spider sometimes walking across these lines, and even knows that those should. Oops! Now the power's going off here because it's so late here in Sweden. Story, narrative.
I'm just looking in the editor and seeing all these scenes. To me, it feels like one of those games that just had like an endless budget because there's just so much content, and it's obviously that's not the case. And it just goes to show how much love and work and attention to detail was actually put into the game. It's really fantastic.
And learning to cheat effectively and in the best way possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the reason I love the kits, because that's, I think, what was made us able to create these huge levels without too much effort, because we could focus on like a few materials instead of making new assets every time we needed some things.
That makes sense. Just for the lighting you showed earlier, the gradients, that's just the general, for anyone wondering, that's like the lighting settings in Unity, those 3 gradients, like, you can just access them. You can go for solid color, or you can just swap the gradients and have that top wall and like bottom floor layer lighting, ambient lighting. And so you put that to really good use. And I'm wondering, do you change those settings throughout the level, or do you maintain like one lighting setting for each world with ambient lighting?
We make some tweaks on some parts of the level that we really want to be distinct. But we also have like a theme in every level. Like this level is more like purple-ish. This level is more like red-blue-ish. This level is more like pink-ish. And we try to keep that theme on a broad scale. So the majority of the level is in that palette, but we bend it a little bit. And in some areas we really like go for a wholly different color palette. Like this is the green count area, because we want this area to be distinct, because it's quite important that you remember where it is.
And the count is the paranoid of the 3 triplets. There's the count, Baroness, and the Duke, and the count is quite paranoid and has his area is quite trap ridden, and green we felt like a paranoid color.
Yeah, the colors and the environments are inspired by the triplets' personalities. So here the buildings are like quite thin and straight, and they go an angle,
skewed.
and I think that adds to the paranoia.
This is one of my favorite parts in the game. Actually, I commented on this just a couple of weeks ago, and I was playtesting just this cannonball stuck in the door there. This example of great environmental storytelling.
Oh, that's so great!
It's like someone
and the cannon right across the.
Fun fact: when I made this, we didn't have any cannons, so I made this cannon actually from a pot.
Oh, nice!
I didn't know that actually. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love this. I love it when this happens. Whenever we do these creative spotlights, the guests we bring on are always like learning from each other and being surprised at the other person's work. And
that's a big sadness with COVID game development wise, that you can't be in the studio and see like, oh, what are you working on? And so we try to encourage each other to post things in GIFs and stuff in the development channel. But of course, some people are shy and feel like, no, this isn't good enough to show.
Right.
But you really have to push each other over distance to like, come on, like even code that I don't understand, just put it in there. Nice code, looks great. I use it as a wallpaper.
Just code wallpaper.
That's so cute. You seem like you have such a wholesome team. Like so far, you've talked about so many great things. A lot of we didn't go into that a lot, but I think it should be worth mentioning here because I think it's good for hiring. And in case your team is hiring, I don't know, but like it sounds like you have a really great company culture, and you are part of like an EA original team. But like you said, it still feels like an indie team. I think how many people did you say? I think chat asked earlier exactly how many people are working on this project.
Yeah, it can be a little bit difficult to figure out sometimes because we do have, I mean, it's about around 40 to 50, but I have to do a real count. But we do have external animators, for instance, and one of our lead character artists who's hired by the company but lives abroad, Borislav Kishaski. I think he's a quite well-known 3D sculptor. You can find him on ArtStation. Borislav, just Google Borislav and 3D sculpt. He's made most of the main cast for the game, and he's just excellent. And he's working full-time over distance for us, I believe. And I think it's full-time. And now, especially after COVID, we realized that there's a lot of opportunity to work with people abroad, and even so it doesn't have to be a problem. Of course, if it's design related or I think in some cases, it's very useful to be together in a room and wave with your arms around, but it doesn't hurt to send an email if you feel like you have what it takes. Yeah.
I think it's really nice that you have like we asked earlier, you did all the clay sculptures and things, and you have a bit of clay on your desk and things like that. I think those are all elements of play that makes even for people who are actually much more technical, it really brings them into the process as well. So just giving things that allow people to play as a concept philosophically is like actually really impactful. And I think really good for team building as well. So it's really nice to see that your team is like collaborating so well across distances around this.
It's really some... Oh, sorry, Leo.
No, I mean, we love working traditional as well, and it's really nice to like sit around the group and just bounce ideas and play with clay, or like draw some sketches on your sketchbook. We need to figure out how this level is supposed to look like. Maybe we can come together and sketch like traditionally, because then you can really get these ideas forward.
And it's just great to rest your eyes from the screen every once in a while. And our CEO / head of development, Klaus Lengeled, who I've mentioned a couple of times, he really wants to, as our company grows, he really wants to push for like, even though we grow, we keep the teams fairly small and make several projects instead of like all 100 of us in this studio in Gothenburg, for instance, working on one game. We would rather make several smaller games with smaller teams to keep this kind of creative creative studio feel, and
that's smart.
And he himself works a lot in clay, as I mentioned, and really pushes for that kind of hands-on do all kinds of weird things and then put it into the game.
I remember back in doing my fine arts degree, that was the one thing. You come into class and your professor would be like, okay, so we have an apple, I need 10 ideas on how to represent an apple. And then everyone's sitting there sketching and like, great, now throw those all in the garbage and make the next 4. Those are the ones we're going to use for the rest of the class. So it's this notion of like iteration and just getting all of your ideas out and not being too precious about anything.
That's great.
Allows for creativity. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
One thing I'd love to look at right now is since we're in the scene, I believe you reduced the rendering time by like splitting up the scenes and combining assets. So can you show us about like a bit about that structure and how you split up the scenes?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest performance issue for us was that we had so huge levels and lots of assets with lots of details. because we have this art style that really demands lots of shapes and polygons. So we had to solve this and reduce that rendering time. So what we did first was we made like a tool that streamed different parts of the level, and it was more automatic. You placed cubes, and the meshes inside that cube were not being rendered when you were in another cube that said it was not to be rendered. Kind of, it's hard to explain, but it's called like the streaming volumes. But we did not use that in the end because we needed more granularity. We needed to work in more detail. So what we did actually was we did everything manually. So we divided all the scenes in different sections. So this, for an example, is the first section of the level. And when you are in this section, it's only this section that's loaded. And then we use a trigger-based system to activate the next section. And in between there, we have a time frame where both of these are loaded at the same time. But we try to minimize that time as much as possible. So it took a lot of time to set this up, but when it was set up, it was the most performant approach because we could be very aggressive in how much meshes we could hide. And other than this, we had like surrounding sections that was being activated.
Hold on. I just wanted to show something. We're in Threetown, so why don't you show the three-legged pants?
Oh my god.
Oh, yeah.
Three-legged pants?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh!
There we go.
That's the kind of detail I look for in my games. That's
All right,
that.
Sorry.
No,
what
that's
were you saying, Leo?
Perfect segue. Sorry, Leo.
That's perfect. No, you can leave performance. It's boring anyway.
Yeah, let's talk about the pants. Who's wearing those?
At one point, we were thinking about cutting one of the legs because it was demanding accent for the. No.
Oh yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so
In
funny.
fact, it's actually three one-legged people that wear those pants, right? It's not one person.
Yeah. But that's a spoiler.
It's three one-legged
Don't tell
characters.
them. Don't tell them.
Oh, that's amazing. Since we're talking about performance, I believe you got a lot of your performance inspiration and some experience in making games more performant from Ghost Giant, a project you had worked on before, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Ghost Giant was also a big challenge because a VR game, Ghost Giant is a VR game. It needs to run at, I think, 90 frames per second. And we developed for PS4 back then, PS4 VR. And that was a big challenge. We had to think about performance from day one. But what we did there was quite different from here. The solutions we had was mostly around like light baking and atlases. I used only like 3 materials for the whole environment in that game. But that approach didn't really apply here. But what applied was to like think about performance from day one and figure out which problems will arise and how we should solve them. So that was the main takeaway, I think, for me. And Ghost Giant is also the reason we tried like light baking.
So what you tried? What? Sorry.
Ghost Giant is the reason why we tried light baking and Lost
Oh
Realm,
yeah.
because it worked really well in that game. But it's obviously a very different game, and it doesn't always work. But it's a really good feature to use when you can, I think.
Yeah, especially if it's a stylized game, it lends itself well to hand painted textures and things like that.
And is everybody who's working on Ghost Giant working on Lost in Random? Is it the whole team?
I think most of us, like 50-50, I would say. Like I worked as a director on Ghost Giant, and so this was a kind of a big step with from like 10 to 20 people to 50, and Maria Svenningsson, the producer on Lost in Random, was the lead artist on Ghost Giant. But half of us work on another project that's also about to finish. That'll be exciting to show as well in time. But so Leo was kind of a lead environment artist on Ghost Giant as well, jumping straight from Ghost Giant to Lost in Random, right?
I worked alone with the environments actually, which was quite nice. I'm a perfectionist, so I like to work by myself because then I have control. So it was a nice challenge for me to work in Lost in Random because it was a much bigger team.
Definitely it was. You could immediately tell the new difficulties when being so many and the new structure that was needed. And while in Ghost Giant, it was more like 10 people, everyone just talking to each other constantly. And when you're 50, it's more you can't just sneak and be like, hey, what do you think about putting this thing in the game? Or like, no, we gotta get that into the planning. It took some getting used to.
Right.
Guys, that's a producer's nightmare. Every producer that's watching right now, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
No,
I know.
It is.
Yeah.
So was that a big shift? And what is that shift like? I find it very interesting to like be working on one game, doing the art, the technical art for it, and the art direction, and then move to a different aesthetic. Like here, I think we're looking at a picture of Ghost Giant, right? It's very bright, very colorful, quite a different aesthetic to Lost in Random. So what's that process like? How do you kind of restart between projects?
I thought it was really exciting.
Okay.
Because when you have been working on a game for a long time, after a while you get tired of the style. And it's really exciting to try something new. And going from Ghost Giant and Lost in Random was not so... It's a super big difference in a way because the art style merges together in a way. I can think in the same way in how I build stuff, kind of, because Ghost Giant is also this crafted world made of plywood and all these kind of crafted materials.
It's a bit modular too, right? And then we also have Lost in Random while we were working on Ghost Giant, we were in early production. Maybe I was working some of us were working 20-10% on Lost in Random, developing a little bit of sketching a little bit on the side, and so you started to get a feel of that and taste for that while finishing Ghost Giant. Same with our next project.
But the biggest sorry?
No, go ahead.
The biggest difference for me, I think, was how the game played, because a VR game is very different. And in this game, you were a big giant. So the world I created was this really small miniature world. And you stayed in one place all the time, so I could fake all the vistas very easily. But in a third-person game like Lost in Random, that's totally different. You have to think about every little piece of the environment, and you need to be able to make it clear so that the player knows where to go. It's really, I think it's more complicated actually.
That's so funny. That was going to be my question, since Ghost Giant was on the Quest in a VR game. I would have thought that it was the other way around, that it would have been much harder on the VR one, because there's a lot of technical limitations, I think. I don't know if you want to talk a lot about that, about how it is working on the Quest, but and then going into working on next gen for Lost in Random. I feel like I would assume that you would have had much more freedom, but I guess it wasn't the case.
No, because when we made Lost in Random, we also wanted to up the visuals to more realism, and that comes with the limitations. So we landed on the same problem areas. kind of.
Yes, it was really it was one of the biggest challenges for the narrative side, was to show all the you can't have cutscenes, so take the VR player's eyes and be like, look at this thing, but you have to so Leo worked a lot with dimming the lights and shutting off lights. Technically, we're shutting off lights in Unity and just having one spotlight on, a baked spotlight on a scene where something takes place, two people interacting. So everything will be dark, and interaction would be disabled, and they're like, oh, there's something happening there, and then they're looking at let's plays that worked really, let's play videos that worked really well. I think people pay attention.
Yeah, I think we really nailed that. I think it looked really good.
It feels really cozy, like you're in a dark room and just this little lit area.
Yeah, I have to go check it out now, Ghost Giant, because it looks. I want to see their origins and some of the inspiration that led to, and then compare the technical stuff. It would be really interesting. It's so interesting that you mentioned the team size again, about how that like actually creates a more collaborative process, because we just recently talked to the creators of Zenith. It's a VR MMO, and we were like, why would you game dev on the hardest mode? Like make an MMO and also VR. And then they said, like, we're actually returning to the origins. Like, we're a super small team. I think they're only 10 to 15 people. And actually, because they're much smaller, they don't have some of the limitations of a big team. They can be much more collaborative, much more creative on the fly. They have that thing where somebody just like walks over and is like, I just want to do this thing now. And they've created all of their basic processes and systems around the allowing the ability of artists to actually come in and do whatever they want inside of Unity. So I think that's actually a plus to have, to work on a much smaller team.
Yeah, it's like a kind of naive childhood time as a developer, where when you're in such a small team, I mean, unless you just always keep your size, the team size, to 10 or 5, then good for you. That's amazing. but that's one thing I miss, because you really get to know everybody so well. And I remember, like, the Ghost Giant, it has a story about mental health, and I remember there was a lot of, like, we could stand 5 of us together looking at an animated screen and discussing, like, how do you look when you're really sad or depressed and lying in your bed, and everybody's like when we're discussing professionally about it, and then like, oh, how do you know about you also? Okay, and like or like we don't talk, like under the, like, indirectly we're talking about our feelings and how we portray them in a video game, and that was really beautiful. And of course, those things happen in Lost Random also, and I really love our team here too, and the way we work is really interesting. I always love taking it to new levels and new challenges of understanding everybody and where everybody comes from, and every type of languages, and it's just different ways of working, and you can find this like there are many, instead of having just one water hole in Lost Random, you have 5 of them, and you can visit each other and find something new instead that you haven't seen before, because you've been so much over at this water hole for so long, and they're like now sitting with Leo, and they're like, oh, this Canon is a pot. My whole life is a lie.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff you don't know.
Yeah,
you're like, whoa, did you do that? Because you have to.
No, go ahead.
Because you have to be a bit more like, you have to work in your area, while in a smaller team, like on Ghost Giant, I was like animating stuff sometimes, and I was helping with other stuff than environments. I was painting characters and so on. But when you're working on a bigger project, you're working more on your thing, so you don't always know so much about what everyone is doing. So it's really fun to sync together once in a while and look at each other's stuff and bounce ideas and so on. But it's a bit more divided in a way, but also exciting. But it's a really different way of working, I think. You really need structure.
For sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a dream team. I think you're going to see a lot of applications coming your way after this stream. So the first game, Ghost Giant plywood. This game, clay. Next game, paper mache, metal scrap. So what's coming?
We are working on some new projects, while also and I can of course like, it's an exciting time right now where we're just trying out different things, while at the same time laying the foundation for a possible sequel. Just of course we have all these ideas amassed for Lost in Random, and of course we want to be open to making another game, but we're kind of right now just feeling the room, trying out different things, and maybe one idea gets scrapped and we use that for something else. Or it's a very creative, nice time right now. We just finished the project and wrapped up the post-mortem, and it's back to sketching in graphite and building in clay, and
it's really exciting times, I think, in between, because when you've been working on a project for like 3 years, you've been stuck with the same programs and tools for a long time. Now, when it's more in between, you can try out new programs, new tools, new solutions for different stuff. Like, how can we improve this? How can we make this better? And I think it's really fun, experimental time. Yeah.
Nice.
Get to cool down and explore.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I think one of the last things we wanted to look at was jumping back into the editor and maybe looking at how you move the character around and how you have an interesting solution with the nav system, the nav mesh, where you actually sometimes use the nav mesh for the main character for the cutscenes.
Oh yeah,
right.
I can show you the nav mesh and how it works, but I'm not super informed about how it works in the cutscenes actually. Okay. Maybe you know about that, Olov?
Not as well as I should, but it's another example of like, oh, this waterhole has got that part. I will focus on the whole thing, and then one day it's like, oh, it's there and it works.
So maybe you can just speak on a high level to maybe that like nav system to the how you use Cinemachine in the cutscenes and to jump to different environments. Anything you can provide on that front, even if it's not a specialty. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, maybe I can go to Diceyard.
Yeah. And you can just holler, Leo, if you come up with like a part of the game that isn't too spoilery, and show some stuff that I could start and show.
Yeah, you're more informed about the spoiler part.
I mean, the Valley of Dice is not so spoilery, but
is it spoiler? Should I not?
No, it isn't.
It's too late.
It depends on how you define a spoiler. But there are previews out there showing the Valley of Dice right now. But so if you want to show something, that's all great.
I mean, I already showed like this frame, so
yeah.
But the nav mesh, I'm not super informed about exactly how it works. I just know that it works, and I know how to work with it. So we have these nav mesh prefabs.
So look at Leo's screen, yeah.
We have these nav mesh prefabs called nav mesh surface, and on these we can set which layer the nav mesh should bake to, like which layer should be affected by this nav mesh bake. So here's the player nav mesh, and then we have different settings for how the size of the nav mesh should be like. So if it's close to a wall or collider, where should the nav mesh end? How close to the wall? So here you can see the nav meshes visualized. So the wider part is the player nav mesh, because the player is supposed to be able to traverse on smaller paths, while this one is the enemy nav mesh, and the enemies are bigger than the players. So the nav mesh is set to be a bit smaller than the player nav mesh. And what we do is, when we have changed something in the level, like if I move this dice and then I bake the nav mesh, should go
It was too much.
There we go. I think it's just quite a big.
Yeah. I was a bit worried there. Yeah. Damn. So you can see that
I see.
Now there's a hole in the nav mesh there. So it takes the collider and makes a hole around the collider. If the collider is set to... No, now I'm saying wrong. We have a specific nav mesh volume, actually. So this is the object that's cutting the hole in the nav mesh. And it's set to a specific layer and so on. Nice. So that's the way the nav mesh is baked and how it works. Ish.
Cool.
So it's just that volume that's set to the layer, right? Not the actual object itself.
Yeah, it's only this volume, this specific volume.
And
the rest of the object is set to other layers, depending on how big the object is and what the...
Are these volumes generated from the colliders?
No, we have to place them manually.
So they're placed after. So after you place all the meshes, you go in and place these cubes. Oh, okay. So it's part of the prefab.
It's part of the prefab. Yeah. Otherwise, it would be.
Otherwise, that would be a maddening task. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. Another interesting thing I just that it just came to mind about performance is that this was really tedious, but we had to push the performance a lot. And another thing we did in that area is we combined lots of meshes. And we could do that because we had worked in kits, so all of these meshes use the same material. Just a fun fact, because instancing objects was not enough for us in all areas of the game. And this was done manually, which is a bit tedious. But if you do it manually, you have more control over optimizing the meshes and increasing the amount of polygons, removing backsides and so on.
Yeah. Sometimes it would be tricky if it was entering a seamless sort of cutscene where even just walks into a scene happening, but it's not a cutscene. It's supposed to feel seamless and fluent with the gameplay. We would have to always exchange the mesh of even the player mesh with a uniquely animated mesh for that sort of virtual camera scene, and so we would have, but usually you would see a duplicate of even standing there popping forward. So you would have to, we would solve that by finding a reasons to move the camera forward past even, and then hide the player mesh, and the camera would move back again, and then we would see the sort of cutscene version of Even's mesh standing there, explained by a creative director. So cheating with things like that when we couldn't make it truly seamless. For instance, maybe there's a jump scare, and the camera looks at the source of the jump scare and backs.
Yeah.
And during that kind of thing, we can swap meshes with Even. Yeah.
But I think film directors do the exact same kind of tricks. If you've seen a movie like Birdman, that's supposed to all be in one cut and seamless. It's not actually seamless, right? They use these kinds of tricks. And what does it mean?
1917 and
yeah, exactly. The war film. What does it mean to be seamless? It's about the result, not really the process, right? It's important to have the result look seamless. Yeah.
I have a really quick question since we're just looking at this, since chat's mentioned it several times. Are you using any special asset for marking your game objects in the hierarchy window? Because people keep mentioning your hierarchy window.
Oh, yeah. I think we have a in-house tool that colors the hierarchy depending on the name of the scene. So the environment scene is green. The core scene is... I think so. I'm not exactly sure. We've had it for a long time, so I don't remember. But if no one else recognizes it, I suppose it's a in-house tool that we have made to make it easier to see stuff.
Okay, nice. Thanks.
Yeah.
I have a couple more questions. So people are asking, how did you get the wind and fog to roll over the edge?
One more time.
How did you get the wind or fog to roll over the edge?
This one. So this is actually like the fog planes, kind of. They work in a similar way, but they have a wind shader on them instead. So it's a shader that's supposed to fake the look of wind. Now 1 second. So it's just a plane, actually. And on top of that, we have a noise mask on the volumetric fog. 1 second. So we have this noise mask that adds this extra movement on top of the wind planes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's all aura. A lot of really cool parameters and features you can mess around with on Aura. Like, yeah, there's the noise. There's also you can change the size of the of the particles, right, and the speed of the displacement and all of that.
Yeah, there's lots of parameters. I really
Yeah.
like Aura. So props to the Aura creator.
Yeah, Raphael, props to Raphael.
So you want to see something with the cutscenes as well?
Yeah.
The simulation.
Yeah, I think it's called that. I'm not so well versed in the cutscenes, but I know how to put them in the level and how to tweak them. So what we do is we have a cutscene prefab that you pull into the hierarchy, which I've done here. And then we look at this, we lock this, and then we go here. And then we have the timeline window open and the game window open. And from here we can see how the cutscene looks like. And then we can like pause and
So
modify real time. So like, I want some wind here, and then I can have this list of activation objects that I can activate on a specific time frame. So like over here you can see this active layer is these it's the winds.
Will they cause the thing to give up, or no?
What did you say?
Never mind.
Oh, this is so great.
So we can do everything real time, and we every like specific object that's linked to the cutscene we have in this prefab. So everything is contained. So when we load it in, all the lights and objects related to the cutscene is being loaded.
Yes, some specific lighting often to make it look like some scenes will, in this scene, for instance, a lot of scenes will look too dark in when trying to show the expressions of Even, and so you have unique lights on her face and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. We have lots of manually based lights.
So who in the team is actually doing this? Like, is there any storyboarding that's done for these cutscenes? Who sits down and sets up the camera angles? Who's actually doing all of that?
I can explain a little bit of the process. I do have a lot of
Please.
storyboards that I gotta make sure they're not spoilery. But I can check on my window here, just an example.
Yeah.
Because you just showed me that one, Leo.
I hope they're not. I want to see these.
So Matthias Lorentzon, one of our technical artists, he is the one who's like taking a chunk out of the environment from here, putting into 3D Studio Max, setting up the characters where they stand, like providing the scene with all the characters and the basic blockouts and he does that first, and then back into Unity to set out all the cameras, and because you got to reset the cameras in Unity, you can't use the same cameras in Max for some reason, and then export it back into Max, and then give that scene to the animator, who fleshes it out and makes it look nice. And that way, it's easy to reiterate on cutscenes and just overwrite old cutscenes in Unity that have just had an update in their animation or a tweak. So Matthias always lays the foundation, and I would draw the storyboards based on the script that me and Ryan North wrote, and give that to Matthias first. We would talk. Luckily, he was in the studio. We talked together. And he sorry, excuse me, I dropped the ball. and we would talk together just how the camera would move, and it's easy to explain with hand movements and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he would set it up, and we would just bounce back and forth.
I know we originally wanted to actually have Matthias on the stream because he has like a lot of knowledge behind the camera system, how to use Cinemachine virtual cameras and stuff like that. So if you guys are interested in that, maybe that can be a dev talk that we can work with you guys on in the future. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm just looking in our animation folder here, and for that scene, who animated that one? That's a good question. But I can just look for something fun here. We have in Two Town where you meet Seymour, one of the. I wonder if I can show my. I think it's safe for me to show my Google Drive here. What do you see? Anything that if I can just show my screen with everything?
You can just show. Are you okay with showing that?
Yeah, I think there's no secrets here or anything offensive. Everything looks good.
Okay.
So
so we'll share
here is
Olov's screen.
So so here we have
So you can show it.
So we have the script here. We have the storyboard. So I would usually just do as quick as possible. This is when you meet Seymour in Two Town, one of the characters to help you repair Dicey, and just very basic storyboards as quick as possible, and then it's more easy to talk directly to Matthias in this case, and we'll just iterate upon this. And there's actually going to be we're going to showcase on social media more of these kind of storyboards and scripts to show the process. These kind of videos showing the cutscene and the storyboard. There you have the script like that. And this is the file that I first give to Matthias, and then to the animator, complete with maybe some video references. In this case, if you see here, he kind of lands. He falls from a top and lands on Dicey, pulls him out of his behind, and this is the reference for that for the animator.
That's amazing.
I love this.
And it was a really great way to team build over distance as well, just looking silly in the camera. What is this? He just landed from the.
I don't know.
This
is so interesting.
I promised there wouldn't be anything offensive, but maybe this is offensive to someone somewhere.
I don't know if you ever saw, but Wes Anderson, when he was making, I think it was Fantastic Mr. Fox, there was a great documentary on how he actually created, and that's what he did. He was such a intense control freak over how every scene was animated.
Wes Anderson, a control freak? What?
What?
Yeah.
I can just tell from looking at one of his scenes.
But they had to build a custom intranet so that he can upload all the little animations that he did for every scene. So it was just a massive internal network that he would just film himself for every single scene to give to the animators day in and day out. And I thought that was so funny.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Me and Victor Becker would kind of split the animation reference work to the animation directing. He would take gameplay animations, and I would take cutscene stuff. And in some cases, it would be it's a really early version of this scene actually, with some obvious. Yeah, it's a blockout. My butt, he asks. This is the one where you could see the.
Final pass.
Does the sound work?
No, I don't think we're pulling any sound.
There's no audio from the video. Oh, shame.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great actor, but it's Lucas Schunemann. But you will see this soon in our social media.
We'll compare it. I'll clip your little video and then we can share it.
This is his eye for some reason. And just got to double check if we have also. Yeah, we have this kind of. We have a recording sometimes maybe with all the voice. The most important part is of course timing, and we had a budget for keeping the cutscenes a certain length. We can actually stop sharing the Google Drive if you want. And thanks. And we actually had we would start out with the voice acting, cutting the lines, and I would put them together in a sound file, just finding the correct timing, while also trying to cut just enough to make it as short as possible. Just the shorter, the cheaper, of course. And then that would work as a foundation sometimes with my recording on top, and then he walks up and he looks really imposing, or he trying to explain whatever can't be explained through just a storyboard or what recording is going on, and so that would have timing that Matthias would base the block out of the cutscene on, and then send onward to the animator. Sorry, this was a little bit ill-prepared presentation.
No, that was great. It was amazing to see those videos. Carol, I think we just got raided.
We just got raided by Lana. It's a Lana raid. Thanks for bringing 300 of your viewers, 289 of your viewers into the chat. For those who don't know.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
We're talking to the creators of Lost in Random. For those who haven't checked it out, we're going to throw the link in chat. Lana's a great game dev. She's also working on her game Strain, so you should definitely go check her out. And she streams every day, all day on her channel. Everything Unity.
Nice. Welcome.
Peace to meet you.
And if you're just joining us, it's one of the a series from our Creator Spotlight series. Follow us on Twitch for more streams. We have another stream tomorrow as well, and more next week. So if you want to get notified, make sure to follow us on Twitch. But I'd love to go back to some more questions, Carl. We got a few more interesting questions.
We got a lot. And again, Matthias wasn't here, but this is it's perfect because, we're just teasing you for more content. Because BitGaming asked, did Cinemachine make things easier when it came to directing scenes compared to other projects where you didn't use it?
For me, it didn't make a direct effect on me because I'm mostly sitting there with the storyboard and looking at 3D Studio Max, seeing play blasts from the animators, and then Matthias works with the implementation. But I could tell that he was a lot happier and relaxed with his system in place because it was very handy and I also understand that all the particle effect artists had a great time timing it there and putting it in there, and it's very handy, like working with the video editor. And I can also mention something about, because it is a bit of a tedious process. It took some time to get to this process, so it's really great to have a Google sheet where or some kind of sheet where you can have a list of all the names of cutscenes and their status, is the script ready? Yes, no, yes, no. Hopefully lots of yeses. And is the storyboard ready? And is the blockout ready? And have all of this kind of in order, so everyone can just check in this one is ready now. I can work with audio just because it's a whole. While cutscenes generally are quite separated from the rest of the workflow of the game, power. Is it? Have we been here all night? I wonder.
It's morning again.
No, it's not in the evening actually. Okay, sorry, I got distracted by the lights again, just like when Leo works with lights in Unity. Back to questions. Enough about Google Sheets. You didn't come here to listen about sheets.
We got a question from Epic McDude. How has it been working with EA Originals?
It's been really great. Ever since Fea, which I was mostly a artist and assistant kind of narrative director on. I worked on the Silent One episodes. You find this little helmet, you put it on. Anyway, I know that Klaus Lyngeled and Andreas Beyer, who was the director of Fea then, were quite happy with, we had been just like in Fea, we now have this creative freedom while just having a really great editor, basically, who just comes in and gives us hard love, or tough love, I mean, and just gives us very honest feedback on are you sure about this? This doesn't work from our perspective, and but we really think this works, or maybe we agree that this, it's just a great part of the team, just having an editor checking in on us. And one of our earlier producers, Dan Blackstone, even came to one of our Christmas parties, and I want to get to private because he's not here, and maybe he doesn't want me to name drop him like this, but a great guy, and everybody. Lewis also, who we worked on now, our current producer, it's very it's very helpful. That's all. And I know Klaus has more, as the boss of the company, has more knowledge about the practical stuff. But no, it's been really wholesome, and of course just very honest feedback, and having this regular check. We will we of course plan together with them, just check out the schedule of milestones and everything with them, and just see that we can make it, and every milestone they will check on our delivery and how does it look and how do you feel about the game? Do you need more time? Or especially now in COVID, that they've been very supportive of, like, we know that this is gonna hit you hard, and we have had some extensions because of COVID also. So they've been really helpful.
Another question from the chat. Forget who this is from, but it's how do you guys go about solving to create efficient gameplay logic and mechanics to keep the player engaged throughout the whole game? Because earlier you did mention there is the combat, but then there's also combat scenarios where you're rolling a dice for a board game, and then there's different puzzles. So it seems like there's a lot of mechanics, right? And so when you were talking about dressing the scene, you created these modular kits. How do you achieve something similar with the actual game mechanics? So you're not always creating custom things.
Well, it is an exploration game, a narrative-driven exploration game, where you first, you are discovering the world of random through its characters and their quests, and they need help just in most adventure games with dialogue windows, but then in combat you do have this game arenas that you've already seen a taste of. That's the basic combat system, and what really put a lot of effort into is making a varied set of board games. Every board game is different than the next, so while you have these game arenas, which we call them, which is just regular dice battle, where you face these enemies. You'll enter these giant board games with different rules. You'll have like one that's just regular snake and ladders, kind of biting its own tail, and you gotta get it to its goal. And one is a chase, so we call it the trash compactor, also from Star Wars. That you have this piece with a burning wall. It's kind of the almost the queen's evil playing piece, kind of hunting you, and meanwhile you have to fight enemies. You can work up energy to roll dicey and move your piece forward, so your wall moves forward before you get squashed, and the arena gets thinner and thinner. So stuff like that. And for instance, in Two Town, you'll engage Royam. One of the my spoiler. Scan going in my brain, but we have previews talking about this. You will engage in rhyme battle, and I won't. In case you didn't watch any previews and want to find out yourselves, that's a thing. That's just a fun thing that one of our designers just put in there, because we didn't need any extra technical support, and it's a fun way to utilize dialogue. Yeah.
Amazing. So you've kept it very dynamic throughout.
Yeah. And like the most of our effort has gone into the battles and creating this interesting dice battle system and these board games, that's where you'll find the most juicy stuff, I think.
Nice. It's getting a little late.
I'm stumbling on my words.
But thank you so much for coming by. I hope you had fun. Thanks for sharing so much. So many little tips and tricks and giving us a little glimpse into your process. The game's coming out. Really nice. Yeah, for sure. I hope you had fun.
It's been super fun. Yeah, it's been really fun, actually.
It was a pleasure for us to have you, seriously.
Yes, yeah. I hope you thought it was interesting.
Chat clearly thought it was really interesting. I think they definitely want more. We'll try to get you some more content. But the game is coming out in 10 days, on September 10th? In about 10 days. You can get it on almost all the platforms. Go check it out. We'll throw the links in there so you can go pre-order it or wishlist it on Steam. But do you have any final words about the game?
Just that it's been a long road. We just finished it, so everybody's just so happy to let this bird finally fly, and they can't wait for you all to play it. It's been a ride. I mean, it's not until 3 years later you stand there and it's done, and you think back on this sketch we first drew, and it almost feel like a finger snap, like the sketch, and then poof, here's the game. But of course, there's so much effort put into it, and it's really great to take the time to talk about it like this and just realize Canon can be made out of pots.
I'm really excited.
It's a highlight.
Really, really excited to see the public thinks about it. And I'm super proud of the team as well. We've done an amazing piece of work, I think. So shout out to the team. There are too many.
Shout out to the whole team.
Shout out to
Random
Zoink.
rules.
Wonderful. Yay. Thank you. This was really great. Like I said, this was kind of a wrap for our summer of Creator Spotlight, but don't worry, we're going to have a lot more Creator Spotlight coming to you. We're going to keep inviting developers on, maybe not as much as now, but definitely keep you interested so you keep learning. So if you have suggestions for creators you want to see on the stream, definitely let us know here or in the Discord, or you can tag Hasan on Twitter all you want.
Tag away.
But in the meantime, definitely follow Leo, Olov, Zoink on other social media. They have really great content posted. Olive, especially like this. Great. By the way, congrats on winning best indie game at Gamescom. By the way. Yay.
Thanks. I also, thank you so much. We were very happy, of course.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We have a lot more streams coming. Don't forget to check our schedule. You can also follow us on Twitter at Unity3D on Twitter, and we'll let you know about the whole schedule. Hasan's going to be back here tomorrow. So if you have a nice Labor Day weekend where you're not doing anything, rest assured, we have you covered.
Yeah, we'll be here tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Time with Cinti Studios.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you all soon. Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.